It's Wizards versus Lesbians, a podcast for your ears. Hello and welcome to Wizards versus Lesbians. My name is Isaac.
I'm Alexis.
And today we are discussing Metal from Heaven by August Clark. Alexis, would you like to do the plot or shall I?
I will try. Marnie Honeycutt is the, as far as she knows, sole survivor of a brutal suppression of the strike that her factory worker family is part of. And a strike that is inspired partly because Marnie and some of the other children working in the magical metal ichorite factory have special magical disabilities, and including a sort of allergy to ichorite. And so, fleeing the results of this massacre, she finds herself in the company of a bunch of mostly lesbian bandits, and proceeds to follow them to their socialist gay bandit utopia, all the while mourning her dead best friend. And then eventually it transfers into a try to win over the rich girl for marriage plot.
Yes, it becomes a dating sim at some point in there, and then things just keep happening.
And then things get weird.
Yes. Are there lesbians in this book?
Oh, yes.
Yes. No shortage of lesbians.
I'm pretty sure there are more lesbians in this book than, like, named men.
I'm pretty sure that you're correct about that. And they are a wide and fulsome variety of lesbians. Very well-developed lesbians in the sense that their lesbianism is well-developed. Not passing judgment on their character development as of yet. Are there wizards in this book?
Yes.
There is certainly a industrialist who...
There are also people who have, like, magical powers.
And there are people who have magical powers. So there are magic users and there are wizards. And they're not actually the same people. But yes, certainly is for Wizards versus Lesbians purposes, Industry Chauncey is a wizard.
Yan Industry Chauncey.
Yes. There's some names in this book. The wizard is in conflict with the lesbian.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
With almost all of the lesbians?
The lesbians are in conflict with each other. Some of the lesbians are wizards.
Yep.
It's Wizards versus Lesbians, a genre that we read. Why should you read this book?
Well, it has a lot of interesting pieces.
Mm-hmm. I've
seen a lot of people online be very enthusiastic about it. I think also just if you want to see a lot of... I mean, if communist lesbian bandit utopia sounds like what you would like out of your life, then read this book. You will have a lot of fun.
Yes, you might have a lot of fun. I cannot decide whether this book is trying to punish you for having fun with fun concepts, or whether its idea of fun is just so far removed from my idea of fun that I am not correctly understanding the fun that is being displayed to me as fun. And is there a metaphor for that in the high degree of difficulty sadomasochistic sex that happens a lot in this book? Yes. So if this is the kind of thing that turns you on, there's a lot of it. And we will attempt to explain what it is.
There are so many lesbians.
This is not the kind of thing that turns me on, and so I am sort of left as an outsider to try to piece together what is meant to be happening and whether I'm meant to be enjoying myself or not.
I think you're meant to be enjoying yourself.
Yes. Yes. Well, you need to have a high tolerance for misery, but if you like your fun to be shot through with misery and pain and violence and injury and communism, then there is fun to be had here.
I mean, Yes, though I think that part of it is that people do actually want their a lot. I think a lot of people do want their reading to be shot through with pain and violence and misery and communism.
Yes. No, I wasn't saying that as if that reader doesn't exist. And as we've pointed out, it does. It's just not me. So I'm going to do my best here with what we've got and who I am. It gets, I mean, we complain that things aren't weird. This one gets weird. It gets really weird.
I gotta say that while I have mixed feelings about this book, I did think that the ending was a bold choice, and I do like a good, bold, weird choice, even if I don't always enjoy reading the results.
Nothing about this book is anime, except the ending is kind of anime, which is interesting.
You will be shocked to hear that the end of Evangelion is listed as one of the among the many, many, many. So I just want to note, it's really funny to me how negative you, how non-positive you are about this book, given that it's listed. Inspirations include Karl Marx, The End of Evangelion, Harrow the Ninth, and Disco Elysium, all things that you love, except for maybe, I know you have mixed feelings on Karl Marx, but...
I've never on this podcast said that I love Karl Marx.
Yeah,
Not once have I said this.
No, but you do evince a certain fondness for communism.
I do, and the limits of that are going to come out in this episode, possibly. If for some reason the Anon who kept complaining about how we weren't leftist enough is still listening to this, I'm sorry.
Right, I missed that somehow. Oh well.
So, why shouldn't you read this book? The plot does not make a lot of sense.
It is kind of a mess.
There are a lot of things where if you sit and think, wait, would that work? Would that function? The answer sort of comes back as a no. There are a lot of characters who are all called by like 3 different names, and who come and go in such a way that it's difficult. It was difficult, at least for me, to keep track of who they were and what was going on. I sort of caught up, but like about 80% of the way through the book, so I was sort of struggling most of the way through.
That wasn't too hard for me. I think this is one of these things.
I think the audiobook...
Yeah, I think it really helps when you can flip back to the list of characters at the beginning.
I would really recommend the print book rather than the audiobook, partially also because this audiobook was not produced with a budget. I will just leave it. I'll leave it at that. There was no opportunity for multiple takes. And also I think this is a book that will reward you going back and reading again to figure out what just happened, which is not something that is as easy to do in an audio format.
Mm-hmm.
It is, it's miserable. I did not have fun while reading this book, or about 80% of the way. And again, that's what yucks and what yums is up to the individual, but this does not yum me. And also, just from a communist perspective, I don't know why there are communists in this world before there was an industrial revolution. It's sort of a religious order also.
I did not find that this made a particularly compelling argument for communism.
No, it made a very compelling emotional argument against capitalism and against and against royalism, but
yes.
And against liberals. But it did not really sell me on the whole doomed, glorious beauty of hitching up the meat wagons. So that's my why you shouldn't read it. How about you?
Yeah, mostly it's just kind of a mess. I think the prose is highly stylized in a way that I personally didn't enjoy, which, it's a lot of blunt sentence fragments. And I like some of that for emotional impact, but by the time you're 2/3 of the way through the book, it's just kind of feels like somebody's bopping you over the head a bunch.
The prose is strange. Like, there is this mixture of, everybody is poor and illiterate, mostly.
And yet everybody talks super highfalutin.
Yeah, even the characters who shouldn't talk super highfalutin. The highfalutin characters talk super highfalutin, and then everybody has access to very complicated labor language and terminology, which they express no matter who they are.
Right. Actually, this is really funny. This is definitely, you know how people complain about the spread of therapy speak in novels? Well, this is like that, assuming that, everybody's, like, if not read the Communist Manifesto, at least spent a lot of time on the IWW website.
Yes, or at least in sort of the DSA mode. We don't find this persuasive as a book in favor of communism, but I don't think that we are meant to be persuaded. I think we're meant to be gate kept. If we are not already on board with the language that is being used.
Yes, which is it's such a bizarre experience for me because, of course, for my master's degree, I among had to read so much communist language. And so I didn't feel gate kept out. I was just like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not seeing a compelling argument grow out of it.
Again, we're feeling a lot. We're feeling a lot, and that's fine. That's not a bad thing for a book to be.
No, but I feel like this book is meant to be something of a manifesto, and I think that sometimes the ideological goals of the book get in the way of the narrative goals of the book.
Well, I think that if you take End of Evangelion and Marx and attempt to fuse their ideologies together, what you'll get is something that does not cohere, even as everything liquiesces into one big lump. So
yeah, so I mean, also, like, again, if you run down the list of influences in the acknowledgments, it gets pretty incoherent pretty fast.
Well, that's, again, fine. I'm glad this exists. It just wasn't for me.
Yes. Yeah.
But we should talk about it because it's fascinating.
Okay. Content warnings?
Yes. That is all I have to say about it.
There's murder, there's body horror, like there's mass death, there's body horror. There's all sorts of kinky sex. There's weird psychological games. There is basically no sexual assault, actually, which is an interesting thing.
Well, I mean, yes. There's a lot of consensual, non-consensual stuff going on, but somebody did get stabbed quite badly. But anyway, yes, there's also our close first-person narrator is a person with significant sensory issues for whom the world is hell a lot of the time, partially because of the sensory issues and partly because they are allergic to ichorite, which is essentially plastic. Even though it is called metal in this book, it functions in the world the same way that like man-made fabrics textures do. So anywhere you might encounter
basically it's basically petroleum.
Right. Anywhere you might encounter that, our main character is miserable. So you're just signing up to be within the perspective of somebody who is in sensory hell a lot of the time and has seizures. And some of us know what that feels like. It does a very accurate job of getting that across. But there's your content warning for that.
We may come up with other things as we go.
We almost certainly
there's,
will.
Content warning, the horrors of capitalism.
Yep.
Children get murdered.
Absolutely. But
all right, spoiler zone?
All right, children get murdered. Spoiler zone? Yes, indeed. Spoiler zone. So where to begin? A thing that I kept coming back to is the book fun? Because we are presented with scenarios that if you write them down on paper, seem like they should be romps almost. Like the going, oh, you're going to have to go to the ball. You're going to have to go to this party where the richest lesbian in the world is going to select her wife from a crowd of diverse aristocrats.
All of themselves lesbians.
All of themselves. Everybody is a member of the Astronomical Society, or whatever it's called, which is sort of a takeoff on the Iranians, I suppose.
The Lunarists.
The Lunarists, right. I mean, I will say the Icarite may be turning people gay, given how many of the world's leading people are lesbians. But I was like, wow, this is like an incredibly like tropey sort of, again, almost anime situation that is being presented to us, like most of the way through what has been a book that started with our main character's whole family getting murdered and hasn't really, lightened in tone since then.
Except occasionally. Like this, I mean, everything that's going on in like the Finger Bluffs, the Bandit Haven is fairly light in tone. Not everything, but like there's a lot of, suddenly our main character is running around having fun with the other kids.
Well, yeah, but that takes like a page. We're not allowed to linger on anything pleasant.
There's a fairly long description of how delightful their life is.
This is true. I guess the other thing about that is that I didn't believe it for a second. But that may be a problem with me accepting the utopia run on banditry that doesn't have like a charismatic cult leader at the core of it. Because you can go back in history and see plenty of examples of the latter. They tend to last like a year, maybe two.
Well, and I think there's a really interesting thing going on with this book because it's such close first with somebody who is not only in sensory hell, but also kind of going through a decade-long complete emotional breakdown. And so, how much of this are we supposed to take as unreliable narrator? I think until I got to the last few chapters, I really thought that we were supposed to take a lot of this as unreliable narrator, including sort of how completely utopian the bandit world is. And then I got to the last few chapters and I was not so sure.
No, we were playing this with a straight bat. Like, we really want to live in the pirate house that is the size of an entire town.
It is the size of an entire town and has, no government and no law enforcement and no crime and is a perfectly functional gift economy, admittedly, because it's mostly being fueled by, stealing, but only from rich people who clearly deserve it.
Yeah, we're mostly like stealing like jewels and high value items, which are then turned into food and
somehow,
which
are somehow sold away for food, but also kept around such that the price of luxury items is basically zero.
There's something very Tumblr communist about this book, for lack of a better term. And then it's concerned about the plight of labor, but doesn't acknowledge that labor is still required in order to make things, under capitalism or otherwise. So objects just sort of exist. It's fully automated, gay space, luxury communism, except in the Industrial Revolution. And all you have to do is steal it from the rich. Don't ask how they got it.
And, there's no violence, despite a bunch, you have an entire town full of people with PTSD whose the main industry is committing violence, and yet somehow there's no violence.
They export it all. In much the same way that the metropole exports its violence to the hinterlands, weirdly.
Yes, they're just bringing that violence right back. But I have trouble believing that even your most utopian society does not have domestic abuse and child abuse and the occasional sexual assault.
Yes, particularly given that everybody is like into really hardcore BDSM. I don't think that we meet a character who isn't, whose sex life we get to see.
Statistically, I'm not actually... honestly, I think you could have something where everybody's super vanilla, and I would be just as likely to believe that there is, sexual assault and child abuse going on.
That was kink-phobic of me, and I do apologize and withdraw that statement. In fact, it might make it more likely that because why there's no violence, they're all able to work it out through rough sex.
See, I'm just not persuaded.
That's where it all sublimates off.
See, I'm not persuaded. I also really wonder how, when they do have communist rapture, which comes at the end, if they're out of rich people to rob, how are they going to, continue having their luxury goods?
I assume the titans that have emerged will have something to do with it, and will be a completely unrecognizable economy, based largely on oily giants who have hatched from the earth.
I suppose at this point everyone's probably joining the hive mind anyway, so.
One of the things about the Hereafterists, which is the name that are given to the communists in this book, is that they believe in a future which is, and like they're described as religionists,
Yes. These are the most Christian communists you'll ever meet.
Yeah, there's a lot of different faiths in this book. And also every single religion on this planet is also about the oil, and has... So it's also one of those, there's a key to all mythologies, and it's about the truth that, underlies all of them and lies under the earth kind of a story.
Right, which is of course about resource extraction, because this is an extremely communist book.
Yes. It's all about pigs and wheat, the religion is. The point of which is that the Hereafterists are willing to sacrifice their lives and do the eternal struggle for a hereafter that is question mark, that is undefined, that is sort of a heaven, because of the way in which it's sort of interpreted as a religious tradition. And we get to see kind of what that heaven looks like, and it does involve human instrumentality and the creation of the goo people and the hive mind. So there you go. I think that Neil Stephenson had a sort of a similar concept of it back around the Diamond Age era. No. This is just how Alexis reacts anytime Neil Stephenson is mentioned.
Yeah, but so going back to the unreliable narrator thing,
Yes.
Which is, another place where I wasn't sure whether or not we were expecting is, were we expecting to not understand that the missing childhood love was also the adopted daughter of the industry baron? Because it seemed real obvious to me. And at first I was like, this is supposed to be a twist. But then they show up at Marnie's home, and Marnie's sort of butch lesbian mentor just immediately looks at her, asks her 3 questions, and then just turns to Marnie like, well, this is the, lost childhood love you've been telling us all about, right? The names match, the heritage matches, the being in a sanatorium for magical anemia matches.
Yeah, we've definitely gotten enough details by that point that we are meant to have figured that out before the main character figures it out. And I think that's fine. I think that Marnie's massively traumatized and has huge mental blocks around everything, and her obsession with the lost love is in itself, it's crazy, and it's meant by the book that you should know that it's an unhealthy and deranged obsession.
Yes. And the way that she handles it over, the following 5 days, as first she sort of, she continues lying to this woman and then murders her father, who, to be fair, deserves it. But,
the twist is not that Gossamer is the
Squire or whatever.
Is Squire. The twist is that Gossamer is Joyce Messier. The twist is that Gossamer is Marnie's foil because she is a lib, and not because she is a ruthless industrialist, or a sort of whatever ideal Marnie had projected on her when they were children. And we do explore that like in some detail, and we try to get as far as we can into Gossamer's mind once Marnie has become omniscient via the goo.
Via the goo.
Gossamer's not having a good time. It's not fun to be a liberal. You have to get choked out every night to deal with the guilt. Which, has not been my experience with liberals that I've known.
Well,
but,
the thing is that Gossamer's a liberal in the Disco Elysium 4-way alignment sense.
Yes. She's an ultra lib.
Right, she's an ultra lib. She's not like, somebody who showed up to the women's march in her pink hat or whatever.
Right. She's not out here doing land acknowledgments of the for the creatures who laid the eggs. I would really love to know what that's about, but that's another story. Is this whole thing a product of colonialism anyway? Did some alien race just use this planet as a seedbed, and we're just recapitulating the act of making use of what's in front of us for our own ends? That's not really explored, I suppose.
No. There is an interesting thing where having the oil be sentient does sort of mean that your magical god goo is kind of taking the place of indigenous people in the history of this world, which I think is one of those things that was just not thought through particularly well.
Yeah, no, and if you read it like that, it does a great job of being like, well, these people didn't have consciousness until we talked to them, which is literally what happens with the god goo.
Yes, I do not think that this is the intended reading.
No.
It's just one of those unfortunate incidental readings.
Let's talk about the dating sim.
So it is actually, I thought it was actually a pretty funny that you spend, several chapters setting up Candor, I think her name is she's going to be the fake Baroness, or the fake Baron's heir, because, the bandits murdered the Baron and also his infant heir, so that they could set up Bandit Utopia. And now that people, and it's fine, they can just tell everybody that the Baron is horribly agoraphobic, but now people at least do want to see his daughter now that she's an adult. And so
Yes.
they've been raising this one child who is in the correct religion to, fake being part of the aristocracy. And then, because they're bandits and they all have to go out on their bandit raids, she dies. Even
Yes.
though she's just the getaway driver.
Yes, and even though they have enough people that they don't need, there's this much is made of like, we need to keep her safe because she's our ace in the hole. Don't send her out on the bandit raids. You have enough bandits.
Well, but the thing is that if you don't, then you're creating a class-based society.
Oh my God, you're right. You're right. We can't treat her differently just because of her utility. She has to go out and. Does that mean that everybody who could possibly be out doing the bandit raiding has to be out doing the bandit raiding?
No, but it's anybody who wants to be out doing the bandit raiding gets to be out doing the bandit raiding, even if it would be a terrible idea for the common good.
Fascinating.
This is like a weirdly libertarian communist bandit utopia.
Well, yes, of course. There's no top-down authority here. Although it's when they pretend that there is. Once you get when Marty brings Gossamer home and has to show her the fake court that the people have put together, which is not really to fool Gossamer so much as it is to be funny enough that Gossamer just goes with it.
Right.
Which I thought was actually pretty good.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that whole section is actually my favorite thing in the entire book. But
that is because, well, among other things, that section is actually fun.
Yes, but they do slot into the sort of the roles that the council actually functions as pretty smoothly. It turns out when they need to put aristocratic names to the functions that they serve. But no, my apps, like, there are a couple of scenes in this book that are just like seem to come out of a different universe, and one of them is when the sort of the hot pseudo-Celtic woman shows up to get them in like a red sports car smoking a joint in the middle of the woods, and
In their like tiny rural train station.
Right. And like it gives so many things at once. It gives like, one thing that's been hammered on is that the bandit lesbians and the aristocratic lesbians are not actually very different, particularly in terms of their tastes. And another thing being that, this is a force that no lesbian of any caliber or persuasion can resist. But yes, there is that whole scene. But regardless, I've now taken us far enough away from your original point that I've forgotten what it was.
Oh, we were talking, I thought that it would be interesting to talk about the dating sim aspect where you have all of these aristocratic lesbians. They really are drawn very much like dating sim, everyone's very distinct in very specific ways. And there is one person who is, who really has appointed herself the player of the dating sim, and she's going to do the matchmaking.
Yes. There is like, I mean, actually, I did want to say before we got into it that I remember what you were talking about now. You were talking about how we lose the girl who's been bred for this role. And so,
oh, that's right.
We have to have Marnie do it. And that was the first point. I mean, things had been like stretching my credulity over the course of the book up to this point. But that was the point where I was like, no, no. This girl who has scars, tattoos and scars all over her body, who's been beaten up a million times,
and who's like currently the most infamous bandit.
Who's currently a world famous bandit. And they wear like little masks when they go out banditing. But it turns out that it works because she's also extraordinarily beautiful. Which it means that she has autism face. She looks like a doll, people have said earlier. So it's like it's her neoteny that gets her through it, because she still looks like a 10-year-old on top of like this scarred bandit's body, and that's very attractive in this world. Just a lot to unpack there,
right?
I will say.
Right, and it's also like, okay, well, why did they send the person whose job it is to be the unmasked, oh, I'm so scared person in every bandit raid? Why did they send her as the secretary? That seems like a bad idea. And it is. They get caught based on that.
Yes. Like the thing that the reason that it works to the extent that it works is that the aristocrats are too rich to really care. Like they're too addled by their, insane power lust for any of this to really register with them at all, because life is a game to them and they just love to like kill each other and then laugh a whole lot about it. Mm-hmm. This, by the way, is because they all went to Eton together, or the in-universe equivalent. This book believes in the private school theory of colonial power, which, broadly speaking, I do too. Which, again, like, I think part of the deal with leftism is recognizing that one of the major things that the rich do is make sure that people who don't belong in their spaces don't get into their spaces. Like the paranoia about being about charlatans getting in is like a defining feature of this kind of class. It was just completely absent from this. I think partially because we're meant to be in
well, we're really at the launch of a new Gilded Age, right?
Right.
And so this is where new money is just starting to invade. And this is a new money party, to be fair. Like, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of old aristocracy showing up, but it's only the old aristocracy who are friends with or trying to win over the new money. So,
right. But we're meant to be in super decadent mode as far as like the hereditary rulers of the world go. And that might be the excuse. It's just that everybody is at this point too inbred and insane and on drugs, even though the bandits are also extremely on drugs all the time, which is just sort of mentioned in passing, and doesn't seem to affect their utopia. That they're like, oh, sure, this is amusing, we'll just run with it. And that is in fact how it goes.
Yeah. Which, I did actually find somewhat compelling given the characters involved. Like that I did find somewhat believable, because like we see Gossamer goes and sees that this is clearly a fake barony and is just like, well, this is funny and fun enough that I don't care. Yes.
And her friend, do you remember her friend's name?
Her friend, who's originally named Azurine, but it's something weird. Vicare,
the knife-wielding material sciences genius, who is a true believer, which is why she was anti-bandit in the first place, because she hated the idea of innocent women being menaced, and just gets radicalized within like 20 seconds of seeing a bandit and being like, whoa, that is super cool. Among my favorite characters in the story.
It takes it really takes 3 days in Bandit Utopia to fully radicalize her.
I did exaggerate there.
She's well on the way within a couple hours, but to really seal the deal, it takes all 3 days. But yeah, Vicari is fun.
Vicari is fun. I don't know what she does in the story, but she is fun. Besides the, I'm stabbing you down to the bone during sex for fun part, which again alarms me. I don't want to, I don't want to yuck anybody's yum. I said this during the episode we did on Antigress, but I'm going to say it again, partially because I want to make sure that what I intended to get across gets across, is that physical violence in this book feels amplified in a pornographic way. That the severity of injuries seems to be scaled in the sort of way that, like, that sort of circus sex, genitalia, or in drawn pornography, just like outsized stuff, is meant to suggest the intensity of feeling, rather than to be read as literal. I mean, assuming one is reading pornography in this way, but
yeah, which contrasts, which I don't think rests quite easy with the parts of the book that are meant to be, exposing the horrors of capitalism and the brutality of the police. Because that violence is basically the same level of violence, because it's happening in kind of a different genre of story.
Yes, exactly right. And you can't go from this sort of cartoonishly outsized violence, person to person, and the sort of the concomitant quick recovery and moving right along without really carrying any of the scars, except in the cool way, with the mass slaughter, burning, and torture of the proletariat, because it loses its sting, unless you, like I am, are primed to take all of it equally seriously, at which point I'm just like, at all times.
Right.
My register for how seriously I want to take the brutality in this book is set when a child watches their entire family be slaughtered in the street in the first 5 pages of the book,
Right.
And that's what I bring into the rest of it, even as it gets, as we have pointed out, quite wacky in places with it. So there you go. I think that's probably my problem. And, in a lot of circumstances, I'm really up for that kind of tonal mismatch. It jars with politics to me,
Again, this is why I feel like the narrative goals of the book and the ideological goals of the book don't really dovetail very well. The parts that make for a fun narrative don't make for particularly convincing, the parts that are lesbians doing cool things don't really sell me on the hereafterists, and the parts that are horrible capitalist violence do make the hereafterists seem much more compelling, but really kind of feels like I'm reading a different story. Yes. I don't look at brutally repressed factory strikes and think what this needs is anarcho-bandit utopia.
Well, I mean, this may be just about our politics at the end of the day, but the book is also just so overtly political, literally from the first page, that it's hard not to. One is being invited to address it in this way, I think.
Yeah, I guess part of the thing is, while you're reading sort of all the violence is the same, as I ended up being okay, so is this, this, it starts out, because another influence listed in this book is Upton Sinclair's Oil!
Exclamation point.
When you read that book, the personal and the political are just inextricably entwined. I mean, the entire book is the main characters trying to decide between these different women, and each one represents a different value. And, the one he ends up with is the communist. And this, it feels like there's whatever's going on with Marnie on a personal level and whatever's going on with Marnie on a political level, and they're just happening in completely different narrative universes.
I suppose so. I mean, I guess that's the issue. It's like, there is an echo of the, I'm going to choose between women of different ideological, that symbolize different ideologies in the dating sim arc, which is what I'm going to call it. When we get like these various women who, are given the one personality trait. The only one of whose name I can remember is Perdita, the psychopath, because Terry Pratchett has ruined that name for me for all eternity. And of course, because we remove the option of her choosing the communist or the lesbian fellow traveler, and so she therefore has to go with the fascist. It just makes sense. Like, that's the next option. But
well, the communist did murder her father, who again deserved it.
Which, I mean, but you picked a communist, and your father's a billionaire industrialist. Like,
right.
You were in some sense murdering your father by making that choice, I'm afraid. In a Freudian sense, if nothing else. But this coexists in the narrative with whatever the thing that Marnie is holding for Gossamer is. The going for another sort of anime adjacent reference, the Undertale, your childhood best friend, and your love for them, and whether that ends the world or not. Again, a very anime kind of a thing. And I don't know if you can make that political. It's so pre-verbal and so just sort of a present obsession in a particular person's life.
But the book is really trying to make it political.
Well, yeah, and I don't know what it says at the end of the day. Like, when Marnie busts out of the egg as the giant oil golem and elemental, sorry, and picks up this woman who's been her her obsession and her projected lover and ideal and foil for her entire life, and it's like, witness me. I don't know what that means in the context of resource extraction.
Well, at this point, the resources are extracting themselves because they have been summoned. Okay, actually, though, because I mentioned Upton Sinclair and because I mentioned oil, and the love quadrangle or whatever it is in that book, I would just like to note that this, like Disco Elysium, really wants to have a world where you have communists without Jews, because these are the most Christian communists I have ever encountered.
I actually was going to ask you that question. Based on the religion that Marnie is, with the torn child stuff and all of that, how Jewish are any of these religions on a scale of 0 to Jevin or whatever it was?
Jeveni.
Jeveni, like space Jews.
Yeah, I gotta say, none of them felt particularly Jewish to me. I mean, because the Hereafterists are this very sort of, I mean, to me, it really did feel like, come the revolution and come the rapture are the same thing in this book.
This book sees the end of days in a very 21st century way. Its messianic communism ends with the rapture. And when the faithful go out of their homes, all the microplastics in their bodies melt away, melt away, melt away. All the microplastics in their bodies shed like tears from their eyes.
But the Honeycutts, whatever the Tullians with their night and day and torn child. I mean, the thing is, none of the when you're looking at fantasy religions, it's actually best to set aside the cosmology and look at what those, religions or ethnic religions are playing on a social role in this world.
Yes.
Like, that's certainly true of the Jeveni. And, you look at, the Honeycutts do not strike me as particularly Jewish in that they have they just strike me as having a very Christian approach to gender. And And it's not like, it's not like Orthodox Judaism is particularly gender enlightened, but it doesn't map on to what you would expect, a like quiverful, like just all the things with their hair being braided and not being cut until they can. Actually, I guess that is a little bit like ultra Orthodox women, but in a very, very different way.
A thing that jumped out to me, yeah.
But like in a very, very different way. And also again, they're not filling a Jewish social role at all. Among other things, yes. They're not communists. But like the thing is that they're not really in diaspora. I mean, they're only like 3 generations removed from the farm. She knows where she comes from, and her, even though she can't go back because they left their farms, like it's only a few generations ago. And that's just, I feel like you can't really have fantasy Jews without there being a diaspora, without them being the other.
I think you're right. And I think that one of the most compelling like readings for this to be all of these religions are Christian kind of a book, is that they all really just sort of coexist. There doesn't appear to be much in the way of like ethno-religious turmoil.
No, except for the sort of quasi-Celtic ones.
Yes, and those folks are mostly fighting each other.
Well, they were fighting each other. Now it's the neighboring country that starts with an R, is Royston.
Yes.
Now it's the Roystoners who are killing the Drustelans.
Right, but that's not based on religion as much as it's based on like
on resources.
Resources and nationality, nationalism, I should say. It's like there's a lot. I feel like the religions in this text are there to, A, be cool, B, be like ways of examining monomyth and sort of inventing monomyth based around, again, oil under the ground, but the social aspects of it are not really explored.
Yeah, well, and honestly, that is always one of my pet peeves is, all of these religions are the same underneath.
Yes, that's a good communist viewpoint.
It is, but I'm tired of all of this communist media that doesn't seem to have Jews in it.
Yes.
I think it says something very interesting about the era in which we live. And I will stop there.
On to the next subject.
Oh, well, let's talk about the scenes where you actually get the bandit raids.
Yes.
Because I think it's, again, part of the utopia here is very interesting, is that the bandits basically only ever commit violence against the police. Somehow, due to clever, staging, the rich people just always hand over all of their earthly possessions, or, all of the goods that they are carrying to the bandits, and nobody ever tries to do a stupid stand your ground thing, and thus it never escalates into real violence. Except when the police show up and then suddenly, there's real violence, which I think is an accurate depiction of the police, but perhaps not an accurate depiction of banditry.
Yeah, and in cases where it's clearly an act of terrorism has almost certainly killed a lot of people, it is kind of just not mentioned, like when our convert firebombs her mother's factory.
Right, that's right.
Presumably the factory was not full of the rich at the time. Maybe it happened at night when presumably they aren't working people on 24-hour shifts in this. Yeah, it does shy away from a lot of. I mean, there's a lot of focus put on the toll of violence on the revolutionaries.
Yeah, like you get to see what happens to Sunny when her husband gets murdered for being a pamphleteer.
But not a lot of attention is paid to the cost of revolutionary war on the people.
Right, this is a remarkably non-violent revolution. Particularly, like all of the revolutionary violence kind of happens off-screen to people who we don't care about.
Yeah, I would say that just about sums it up.
And this is, and that somehow, I think that this is, again, a place where I don't feel like the book is quite manages to cohere, is that it feels like the narrative really wants our bandits to be good people for ideological reasons, and thus they only ever commit violence against the police, and somehow their, all of their theft is always nonviolent against people who deserve it.
Yes, who are not harmed in large part. But we do get the scene with the police when, you shot my partner and therefore I'm going to do something incredibly sexually coded to you with my baton.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was a weird scene.
That scene, like, again, I keep coming back to which of these acts of violence are we allowed to get off on and which are we not?
Right.
Because that one was just described pornographically from start to finish.
It definitely felt just as sexually charged as the knife fight she has with Vicare after, during and after which they have sex.
Yes. And there's another bit in the book where one of the aristocrats is describing, like, somebody being a sort of coerced into being a sex slave for somebody else. And she says, imagine encountering it in a novel. Wouldn't that get you slick? And I'm like, well, I'm reading a novel right now. Like, what point are you trying to make? It's like, does that mean that it is like aristocratic and depraved to get off on ideas of the wrong kind of sexual violence? But there's so many different kinds of sexual violence that you're proffering to me in this book, some of which is coded as villainous and some of which is coded as hot and some of which is coded as like complicated and, sort of, are you just offering these all to me and are like, take your pick and I shouldn't ask these questions. And if so, why are you pointing this out?
Right.
It does not make any sense to me. Just as a sort of like, it feels like it hasn't been worked out, and that like, and this is, and maybe this is sort of part of the whole of the book, is that there is a lot of very like libidinal, this scene is cool, this scene is hot, this scene is full of the kind of feelings that I'm full of, this scene is full of pain, that is much more concerned with expressing it at top volume than where it goes, what it belongs, what it serves, and what it means at the end of the book. And that's very anime, again.
Yeah.
So maybe this book is quite anime at the end of the day.
I think actually maybe it is, yeah.
This one goes out to folks who also like Marx and End of Evangelion. Arise, ye workers, from your sleep, you prisoners of want, for reasons back, and we are done with Kant. Away with superstitions now, ye servile masses, arise, we'll change the stuff and rise to claim the prize. So comrades, all come rally, and the last fight, let us face the internationale. We'll unite all the human race in orange goo. But that I think that's a good place for me to button up my main disposition on this thing.
All right.
Shall we do some minor notes?
Yes. Well, I have one very minor pet peeve, which is there's all this dramatic stuff made of how they tattoo their chests just above the swell of their breasts with their names upside down so that they hang. Presumably they're being hung by their feet here. People can read their names. But the problem is, these are mostly women. Your
breasts are going to cover your,
right?
If you're upside down.
Right? Like, unless Lesbian Bandit Utopia is actually full of incredibly flat-chested lesbian bandits, that is not the place that you should be. Like, just do it on your neck.
Yeah, but then the plot wouldn't work if she had it on her neck. So.
I understand. I'm just saying, like, this is again.
Put it on your belly,
Well, but I don't know if they're being hung upside down naked.
Wow. There's a lot to, there's a lot to consider here. There's certainly a lot to consider here. My notes consist of like, this girl is named Sisfay. That's pretty good.
I thought it was a Sisyphe, but you're the one who has the audiobook, so.
Look, the audiobook narrator's approach to pronouncing words is eclectic. Pronouncing, he says. Artistic. So I'm not going to take anything that is said in the audiobook as gospel, but at least to me, this girl named Sisfay.
Well, it's supposed to be Etruscan according to the acknowledgments, so.
Okay. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I think that's just about all that I have to say about this.
Oh, I have one more minor note, again, nitpick, which is the azurenes, which are just pomelos planted on the magical oil, right. And then they become delicious blue tangerines. But they're supposed to be delicious blue tangerines because the ichorite is flowing through them. So how is Marnie able to eat so many of them?
That's a great question.
She's deathly allergic to ichorite. She, has seizures and oozes. She just, oozes serum and starts seeing things when she touches ichorite. So why... But, she will quite happily wolf down azurenes.
Maybe it's just the dye. Maybe it's like when you put a rose in colored water. It turns the color. But that's because the fluid has been sucked up and put through all the capillaries. Yeah, no, this is... don't think about it too hard. We are thinking about this too hard, clearly. And we should be addressing this one on a much more visceral level.
Yeah, I think that this book works better on a visceral level, and unfortunately I'm just not capable of reading it, reading this one in particular like that. So, oh well.
I will now give you my visceral reaction to Metal from Heaven. Ugh.
Also, I think that the azurine thing would have worked a little bit better if you'd had literally any other fruit mentioned beforehand. Like that they're supposed to be special, because until it is mentioned that they are planted on top of ichorite, I just thought that this was a nice little fantasy world twist of, oh look, instead of having oranges, we have blues. So it would have been nice to have mentioned, just had a few more fruit, have other fruits show up a little bit more often. It would have made the azurine stand out more.
This novel did not have enough fruit in it, ladies and gentlemen, and others.
In one sense, anyway.
But a whole orchard in another sense. But, oranges, and whether they're the only fruit or not, I'm not going to bother to make that into a coherent joke.
Okay. Azurines are not the only fruit. That is my point.
That seems like a fine note to end it on.
Okay, yes.
I apologize to anybody we're probably not going to read August
We are
Parks.
absolutely not going to read the YA trilogy, because I read 2.5 chapters and I find every single person in this book so viscerally annoying that I cannot get through to the end. And I'm pretty sure the narrative wants me to like them.
This one is just not for us. But
if it is for you, I am glad you enjoyed it. It does have a lot of fun names.
It does. Bye, everybody.
Bye.